Yes. Just a few more days to the NFL draft. I'm so excited. Everything is coming down to this draft. And Daniel Jeremiah had a lot to say about the teams in the first round. Could be a lot of trade backs, and the Eagles being one of the very few teams that are aggressively going to trade up. And we're going to be talking about the wide receiver position because it looks like the Eagles have interest in a veteran receiver for depth purposes. And we're going to be talking about that as well. So let's get into it.
A killer buried, but not dead.
Darren, we better turn around. Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
Yo, what's going on, guys? Hope everyone's having a fantastic day today. This video is sponsored by BetUS. Definitely go check them out if you guys have not. So we are a few days away here, and we had some interesting things, couple interesting things that have come out so far. Okay, Daniel Jeremiah was on X. Okay, and his handle is Move the Sticks. If you go to his profile, he had some things to say about the first round, what teams might try to do, and the Eagles being one of the very few teams that could be very aggressive here. He says, I think there are a lot of teams in this draft that would like to go in reverse, and the Eagles could be one of the few teams that would really be willing to put their foot on the gas and get somebody. They have a ton of picks. I think they have 12 picks next year, so they could be a team. You're always looking at teams that could move back. They could be a team, say it's Walter Nolan who's there. Maybe that's someone they would be aggressive for and move up. Okay. Now, obviously, this is just, I know realistically the Eagles have been always pretty much looking forward to trade up in every draft that we've been in the last few years. They're always pretty much aggressive. They're always trying to find that right spot to where they can get the guy that they want. And then we all know this, that the trade ups are always possible. And the trade back could be very possible too in this draft. I could probably believe the rumors. The only rumors I really believe right now that I'm kind of staying on track right now with is that I think they're waiting on two guys. I think they're waiting on James Pierce Jr., and I'm thinking they're really waiting on Walter Nolan. Where if you want to go late in the first and, do they want to get the sixth or seventh best edge rusher? I mean, is it worth reaching that high in the late first, or would they trade that pick back? Or would they just say, you know what, let's start with a new position. If all the defensive linemen are coming off the board, you're at 26, 27, something like that, and safety hasn't been touched yet. So, yeah, Malachi Starks could be really, you make the jump there to get the best safety in this draft. So I think their options are open. This is a perfect draft for the Philadelphia Eagles because there really isn't, a turnaround type player in this draft when it comes to what the Eagles need. There's not some generational talent in this draft or anything like that. I think there's a lot of ceiling with a lot of players. Okay, because you're at 32, I'm not expecting them to make a trade into the top 10, as we've been hearing of stupid rumors that just make no sense when it comes to the Eagles trading their best players. We've done enough of getting rid of the players that really had to walk for specific reasons, whether it was comp picks, whether it was just because the Eagles just couldn't tie money into these players coming back. The Eagles want to get younger. We need this youth movement. Everything is going into this draft. We have to trust their process. Look what happened last year, and two players we ended up getting, and they're pretty much superstars at this point after their rookie years, winning a Super Bowl. So you have to trust this process and what they're doing right now, and I feel like everything will start to unfold as that first day happens. I think there's going to be trade bait on the table for the Eagles because realistically, I think Dallas Goedert is a big trade piece to move up. What's going to help you not giving up a lot of picks and trading a player that needs a contract? And there's probably teams out there that have called about Dallas Goedert. We talked about this a million times. Okay, I've said this, Rupert. I said it earlier, just before. I think it's going to be defensive line. I think they're trying to get a couple guys realistically between, maybe at least like 17, 18 to like 25, 26 for a trade up. Kind of between both those numbers in the first round, to make some type of aggressive trade up right there. So to get one of two guys that are there. And if that's not the case, I wonder if they'll get like I wonder if they'll get a Izuruku, or they'll get somebody else like that, in the late first or something. So It just really depends where the value is going to be. If the value's not there and they feel like, everyone that they want is off the board and there's really nobody else that's worth taking with the fifth year option and paying a lot of money, they will trade that pick back. There's no doubt in my mind there'll be a lot of teams. If the Eagles sat at 32 and they just wait until their pick is they're on the clock at 32, a lot of teams are going to call. A lot of teams are going to try to make an aggressive trade up for that last pick in the first round. And the Eagles better fleece a team. If yeah, I'm not trading back. Well, I'm not trading back unless it's like we have a pick in the early second round, like the next few picks, or a team decides to give us like a first round pick for next year. That's how much value that 32nd pick has. As much as people are sitting here, oh, they have the last pick in the first round, it's going to be boring. No, it's not going to be boring. There's going to be a lot of action going on, because if the Eagles literally stay at 32 and don't move, they're going to get a lot of phone calls, and the Eagles will be taking a trade back if something is given to them that's really worth it for next year. Trade back the early second. I don't want to trade back too far because that's not going to make any sense. You want to jump on one of these players that lands on the second day. If they feel like they can get one of those guys and there's a team that's willing to trade with them and they end up trading back with the first few picks on the second day, they'll get the guy that they want. Okay. So I think there's a lot that goes into this, but is it surprising that there's going to be some aggressive trade up? Probably not, because we've seen this a lot of times, but they're not going to reach and they're not going to give up a ton of picks, depending on what team they're going to trade up with and how far up are they really going to trade up. So defensive line, especially for two guys like even Walter Nolan's supposed to go top 15, top 20. I don't think he makes it past 15. I don't think he makes it past between 15 to 20 realistically. So it's going to be tough, but you have trade bait if you want to, trade a player and give away a couple picks. You have 12 picks next year. You have 10 picks this year. You have 4 fifth-round picks. So there's a bunch of different combinations the Eagles can really make. So if it was me, realistically, I would go defensive line. But if it's one of those two guys that's not around, say they lose James Pierce Jr., they lose Walter Nolan, and they don't feel like they could pick up an Izaraku or something like that, or if they want to go for an Adam Moore, if they feel like they want to go after a safety, like I said, Starks or Adam Moore, I am perfectly okay with that. I have no issue with that. I don't think it's going to be offensive line, tight end. It's just not showing enough. They're going to go somebody first day, obviously the first night. So it might not even be that. It doesn't feel like linebacker is really a big pick for them in the first round. As we all know, it's just, I think they're going to get more of a depth piece later on in the draft. Because I think Trotter Jr. will be ready at that point. But we'll see. I've been rambling on and off about this in this video, but it's just, there's just so many different things they could do here. They're not going to just reach for somebody because they just need that position. They're not going for need. They're going for value at a position. And, I know it's very weird to be like, oh, it's not need. Well, of course, it's going to be a little bit of a need, but they're not going to reach for a guy that's, say that, there's a guy, at their pick, a few guys that are still left. They potentially can make the trade back and be like, look, I get an early second round pick and some more picks. I can get this guy literally on the second day and not, no fifth year option. I'll have to pay a lot less money for this guy too. So they have the choice of giving somebody a fifth year option at 32 than to trade back and be like, hey, you know what? We don't really feel like there should be a fifth year option, and this guy shouldn't get paid a lot of money for the value that he has because he's more of a second day, as for the Eagles of what they think of that player and their value, if they're worth a fifth year option or if they're not, they make that decision at 32. The 32nd pick is actually a really good pick because you have a lot of decisions to make there. But it just depends how that board is falling down, and we'll just see what happens in the meantime, So we'll see. We'll see. I know I've been, going back and forth on it, but like I said, it comes down to value. And, if they feel like there's only 2 edge rushers or 2 DTs they really want, and they're all taken off the board by 26, 27, they might trade up at that point, and let's just start the safety movement in this draft and get the best guy. That's what they should really jump for if specific guys are gone, because there's going to be guys moving to day two. They're going to be like, this guy will probably be available day two. Let's try to get him day two. So we'll see what happens. But Daniel Jeremiah ain't wrong. But if there's a lot of trade backs, that's good for the Eagles, because then it'll be easier for them to trade up. If there's going to be a lot of trade backs, and the Eagles will be in one of the very few teams that want to trade up in this draft, I mean aggressive. I'm not talking about moving a spot or two. I'm talking like 10 spots, maybe more. You never know, depending on what the Eagles are willing to give up. If there's a player involved, if it's just picks, if they're going to take a pick for 20, some picks this year. They have picks next year as well. Like we said, they have a lot of ammunition, besides the comp picks that aren't rewarded yet. That's not until the next offseason for 26. And the only pick they really have right now are their own picks for 26, and the Hassan Reddick third round pick that we ended up getting for 26. The comp picks they can't trade, but the conditional pick they could trade, the Hassan Reddick trade, like I said. So, like I said, it's going to be it's an exciting draft. Being for the last pick in the first round, it's more exciting, and there's going to be a nice build up to it to be excited. So we'll see what happens. Sorry for rambling that much, but it is what it is. We got to talk about it. We're just rambling on about it. So the Philadelphia Eagles, okay. Now it looks like the Eagles have interest in adding. We're talking about a specific player right now. So look, you lost Paris Campbell at wide receiver. He went to the Cowboys. Britton Covey doesn't look like he's coming back at this point. You signed Terrace Marshall. Okay, you got Johnny Wilson. You got Anaya Smith. Johnny Wilson's very raw right now. Very raw. Needs another offseason program. I'm really rooting for Johnny Wilson a lot, okay? And Anaya Smith really needs to turn up and do something, because I feel like if Anaya Smith just looks like shit for another offseason, I think he's done. I think the Eagles are going to start to let him go slowly. So it looks like the report from Bleacher Report says the Eagles could be potential trade destination for Panthers wide receiver Adam Thielen. Okay, though Philly traded for Jahan Dotson last offseason, they're still searching for a reliable third receiver behind A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. Now, I don't think that Jahan Dotson is unreliable. I just think that the ball goes around to so many guys at this point, especially Saquon Barkley being in the backfield now. It's tough to give to everybody the ball. Okay. Jahan Dotson, the only great thing about it is, like, we know he's got the talent. He's a first-round pick, a former first-round pick. We know Jahan Dotson's got a lot of talent, and defenses have to really respect his speed. Okay. And because you didn't use him that much in the regular season, they were able to do some different things with him, in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl, where he had those 2 catches. Okay. And because there's not a lot of tape on Jahan during the year, they were able to take advantage of that, in the playoffs. And that was a great thing. So Jahan Dotson's dirt cheap at $3.5 million for the season. So that's really good. That's fine. You know what I mean? Let him, play out his year and let him go sign somewhere else. And the Eagles might be en route for another receiver they're going to look for next year. So you never know. But you have Terrace Marshall, and he's a camp body at this point till he proves, he's got experience. He's the most experienced guy when it comes to the depth guys on our roster. So that's pretty much it when it comes to our receivers. So Adam Thielen, making a trade there wouldn't be bad. I mean, it wouldn't probably cost much. Adam Thielen's not the player he used to be, but let me tell you something. When a receiver goes down or something like that, who do you got depth-wise right now that you're really going to trust? Adam Thielen at least will get some attention. And I think he's very reliable. And like I said, he ain't going to be no superstar in Philadelphia, but let me tell you, he might look even better because of the amount of weapons are in this offense. If A.J. Brown's got to take a few plays off, or Devontae Smith, or even if Jahan Dotson ends up missing some time, I would have no issue putting Adam Thielen in games if you really have to do that. So I think this is a lot of, I think the Eagles are looking at this as really good quality, for the depth purposes. I don't think they're trying to replace their number 3 receiver, but maybe, now they'll have another guy that, he's not just a speed guy like Jahan Dotson is. And now they can really use Thielen. He's average. He's got, he's mid-tier size. Like, He can catch the ball, he can test catches, on short passing game, he's not bad. So I think he's very reliable to, be a nice depth guy for the Eagles. I'm not against this at all because I think because somebody goes down, that's it. Remember, Devontae Smith was dealing with some injuries last year. He had the hamstring injury he was dealing with all year, the back injury that Devontae Smith had. So you know what I mean? So he actually missed the first amount of time he's missed in his career. And AJ Brown, these guys get hurt, man. These guys have lingering injuries. And sometimes you say, hey, if you have a veteran receiver that's sitting there that could be productive, why don't you use him? So I think they should be looking for a guy like this, and I think he'd be a good fit in Philadelphia. I don't see why not. I'm not against this whatsoever. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited to see the battle and the growth and maturity of the game, and Johnny Wilson to see he takes that next step going forward. Anais Smith, will he actually show up? I know he got hurt in the offseason last year, which, you get hurt in an offseason program as a rookie, you're already behind the eight ball. Like, you have to fight even harder just to get back, get some attention, and actually do something. And Anais Smith, I thought was going to be the leading receiver, at least receiving candidate for the wide receiver 3 spot last offseason. And then, nothing happened with him. He was horrible, and they just, they traded for Jahan Dotson, and we were like, yeah, we're set. We're ready to go. So I think always having a veteran receiver on the back end of things is good. A lot of value there. So we'll see what happens with that. But let me know what you guys think about Adam Thielen in a trade. What would you give up? And you'd think we would need some veteran depth there, which would be good. And let me know what you guys think about Daniel Jeremiah. And obviously, a lot of teams trading back. What would you do? And how far are you willing to trade up? And do you think Dallas Goedert is still trade bait? And I think Eagle fans aren't stupid. We know Howie Roseman is always looking for an aggressive trade up. And but if a lot of teams are trading back, that's good news for the Eagles, because then, hey, there's always a phone call to be made and a deal getting done to move up drastically to get the guy that they want. And that's the most important thing going forward, whether it's an offensive player or most likely a defensive player. And, we'll see what happens. But other than that, guys, that's pretty much it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Eagles news every single day. And make sure you hit the like button because it helps the channel tremendously. And definitely hit the link in the description in the live pinned comment as well for the Philly Shakedown Hurts merch. And it's been selling like crazy. Go get your Hurts merch from the Philly Shakedown podcast, and definitely check out the site. We appreciate it so much. You guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you guys on the next one. Shakes what up, follow side. Peace out, guys. Peace.